How's it going, guys? It's Najam. Welcome back to another video. In this video I'm going to review the TCL 40 Nxtpaper 4G smartphone. This is a smartphone that has the Nxtpaper Display technology, and as you can see it has a matte finish on it. I'm going to talk about this display technology and also as this smartphone as a normal phone for everyday use, and I'm going to be talking quite a lot about the display. So let's get started. Now we're going to start off with the specs and we'll get those out of the way. I'll just go into IDA 64. Now this phone does say that it has give you a good few minutes, the MediaTek Helio G88, but unfortunately this one that I have has the G85. Now this is very similar spec. It might actually be the same CPU just with a different name. So this is a slightly older version of the G88. This is an 8-core CPU. It goes up to 2 GHz. This has the Mali G52 MC2 GPU, and this GPU is actually from 2018 or approximately around about there. So it's a very old GPU. So these are my notes I've just pulled up. So I'm just going to go over the specs. It has 8 GB of RAM and also 8 GB of VRAM. It shows down here that it's got 8+8. And to be honest with you, I don't really think it needs the virtual RAM because the bottleneck is actually the CPU and the GPU. It's got 256 GB of storage, and this is the specifications of the display. It's a 6.78-inch IPS LCD display with a resolution of 1080 by 2460, and it also runs on 90 Hz, which is actually pretty nice. The battery is 5010 milliamps, and it's running Android 13 with TCL's new user interface. If you swipe down, you get this different look that they've got their own user interface. This does have 2 SIM card slots as well as a micro SD card slot, so you can have 2 SIM cards and an SD card slot at the same time. And it does have they do say it's 33 watts fast charging, but I've only managed to get 30 watts on the fast charging on this phone, but it charges up pretty quickly, so that's very nice. And the price is £190 for this phone. Design wise, in my opinion, this is a very beautiful looking phone. As you can see, it has an iPhone style design to it from way back, and I really do love the design on this phone. It's personally one of my favorite designs, and it's a very nice design. The only thing I don't like about it is what they've done with the cameras over here. They've gone with the black instead of just keeping it blue. I think that would have been a lot better. But let's take a look at the device. On the front you have the display. You have the front facing camera, which I believe is 30 something megapixels. And you have the front earpiece, which also acts as a speaker. So this has stereo speakers. One is at the bottom and the other one is on the front. You have the power button, which also has the fingerprint sensor. And then you also have the volume up and down buttons. And the fingerprint sensor is actually pretty nice. On the top you have a microphone. On the left side you have the SIM card slot. On the bottom you have a Type-C charging port as well as the main microphone and the main speaker. And you also have a headphone jack, which I've actually been using on this phone. On the back you have the 2 cameras, which I'll talk about in the camera section. Now the device itself is actually very light as well. So that's pretty nice. And the fingerprint sensor is actually very nice. And of course, because this is design wise, when you put this on the table, it will wobble about. So that's something to take note of. Now I will mention, as far as taking the display or to make it look as close as possible to a paper and stuff like that, they've actually gone with the lightness and the weight of the phone as well. So this feels very light in the hand, and it's really surprising how light it is. It does feel very light, and that's actually one of the things I really like about this. It does feel very nice in the hand, and because it is a bit of a sharp design, the weight of this phone, because it's a very light phone, it actually helps and it doesn't dig into your hands. So that's actually pretty nice. The back surface here is very smooth, and also the sides, it doesn't have any texture that you can grip onto, whereas the Samsung phones or anything other that has a glass back, because of your steam from the hands, and actually creates a suction, and so it becomes very stuck to your hand. But this phone doesn't do that. It's a very slippy phone in the hand. The build quality on this phone is also actually pretty nice. I will say one thing, the vibration motor inside this phone is actually very soft. So I had it on vibrate only, and I actually couldn't feel the vibration when it was in my pocket. So that is a bit of a letdown, but it's not the end of the world. I actually do like the vibration that comes from the motor when you're holding it in the hand. It is very, very nice and very mellow. So this is my Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus. It has a 6.7-inch AMOLED display, and the TCL has a 6.78-inch LCD display, but the aspect ratio is quite different. Now this you could say is almost like a 6.8-inch display, but the aspect ratio is quite a lot different. If I hold this next to each other, you can see that the displays are actually the same size, but the TCL has this black bar at the bottom, and that's the extra bit that you get with this phone. Really the only thing is that it's just taller. It's just that tiny little bit taller from the bottom. There you can see it's just a tiny bit taller. But there is a negative side to this, and that is if I go into the home page, you can actually see that the scaling on the display is quite a bit different. So if I go into screen zoom over here, you can see I can change the scaling on the phone. Now you can't find this option in the display settings on this one. This just changes the font. It doesn't scale things down or make them any smaller. It just changes the font, which I just like to have in normal because otherwise it looks weird. So that's one negative thing about this phone that I don't like. While the display is very big, it's very nice, you can't scale things down. And so when you're going through certain applications like this one, look how big that button is. I can go on the same application here, and look how much it fits on this display over here. As you can see, big difference. And this comes really handy in how you feel using the device, because this feels like an actual bigger display, whereas this one just feels like a really small display just enlarged up. So everything is very big. Now one of the things I love about this phone is, as far as the design goes, you can see at the edges the display is actually rounded off, and that's very nice. When you're swiping through and you're going back and forward, in for example this here, I can press go back. When you're doing these gestures, it feels very nice. It doesn't feel very sharp. That's one thing I like about this. The display viewing angles are very nice. From the front it looks the best, and I'll talk about reading and how easy it is to look at in a bit, but this is an LCD display. Compared to the Samsung phone, it's not going to be as good as the Samsung phone, but the angles of view this you get from an LCD module, an IPS LCD display, so they're very nice, but it does shift a little bit as far as color goes and everything if you look at it from certain angles, and you do get backlight bleeding as well. So let's talk about the Nxtpaper Display technology. Now this, as you can see, it looks like a matte finish. The idea is to make it easy for you to look at the display and to read, and to make it as like a paper. Now I'll have separate videos comparing this to an OLED and the color e-ink display. As part of the technology, one of the things that they want to do is make it easy to see outdoors, and compared to a glossy display, it's actually around about the same. The only difference is when you look at it at certain angles, it is easier to see because it's a matte finish. The display is very easy to look at, and that's one of the part of the technology, the Nxtpaper display technologies. And I have to say, from straight on, it looks very easy to look at. It's very nice. It does have a certain softness to it because there is a sort of an anti-aliasing type of filter going on. I should probably show you text on a white background. If you get close up, everything, including these icons at the top over here, you've got every single thing that looks, there's no harsh edges. It looks ever so slightly soft and smooth. And actually I thought this would be a bad thing, but I love it. It makes the display so much easier to look at because there's no pixels or anything. Now you can't get a high resolution AMOLED displays, and you will have the same effect, but when you have something that's really sharp like fonts, you can't have anti-aliasing on fonts in software, but this is actually sort of a anti-aliasing filter, kind of the same thing that you would find on camera sensors to get rid of color patterns in images. But so what this does is it makes the image look ever so slightly soft. Now one of the advantages of this is that you don't need a really high resolution display to have it look this good. So you can have a 720p display, which is what they've done on the 5G version. And a lot of people, obviously, when they see numbers, it's like, oh my god, this is horrible. But that display looks very nice. I've seen it, and as far as the pixel density goes, it's actually pretty nice. And with this sort of filtering in front, it looks very, very nice. Now you will notice the lower resolution when you're watching videos or when you're looking at images. You will see them differences, but even with this high resolution display, I don't think you need any more resolution than this. This is 1080 by 2400 with another 60 pixels added on. So this is actually pretty nice. It's a really high resolution display. It's very easy to look at. The only downside is the viewing angles. I think they just give away that this isn't really a paper. The outdoor visibility is actually pretty nice. It's I wouldn't say it's amazing. The color e-ink displays and the e-ink displays themselves, they're actually quite subliminal in that, so because they are deflective. This is just another LCD display, so you're gonna get the same sort of performance from this. Now another one of the things I love about this, and I didn't think I would like it, but I love it, that's the texture on this display. It is smooth, and a lot of people ask about screen protectors and everything like that, and I actually don't recommend putting a screen protector on it. Now I don't know how easy it is to get this scratched, because I've actually taken very good care of it. I've taken caution on this, so I've managed to not scratch it at all. I've had it for a few weeks, and so I think I've done a pretty nice job, but I don't know how easy it is to scratch these. And the thing is, if you put a screen protector on it, you're going to lose the texture, and this texture is amazing. I didn't think anything of it, but it's actually very nice. It's a different texture from the back. It's smooth, and when it comes to smudges and fingerprints and all that, I mean, that's one thing we know, that with the matte screens and all that, it's not an issue as much as it is on a glossy screen. But when you have water on your fingers, the water doesn't run off all over the place and all that. That's really cool, and you can just wipe it off like this, and there's like nothing there. So that's actually really, really nice. Even if you have wet fingers or oily fingers, you can actually run your finger along and it'll just slide across. Now, as far as the display colors go, we have NxtVision, which I'm just going to go and talk about in just a moment. NxtVision is display enhancements and all that kind of stuff. I've actually taken this off because I've not found it to make much of a difference as far as my use case goes. The only difference I can see is the game enhancement. What this does is it lifts up shadows, so you can actually see what's hiding in the shadows, I guess. But I've not really used that because I'm not really into that kind of stuff. Now, because you do have this on, it only comes on when the game mode is on, so when the Android recognizes a game. But I found that when you have a normal looking image, it just messes it up because it makes everything look flat. So the game mode, the game enhancement thing, I'd rather leave it off and play the games just as they are. As far as the other things, you got reading mode, which is basically black and white, and you got eye comfort mode, which is just the night sight mode that you can put on the eye comfort mode. Yep. I've taken it off because I've got it on this phone, because the blue light and all that, you need it on this phone. This has filtering in front that apparently gets rid of like the blue light or something, a little bit of it. But from my experience, it looks the same as any other display. But I will mention one thing, and that is really important. If you go down to color mode and temperature, by default it's on vivid, and you can see it looks really, really blue. This looks really, really blue. When you take this out of the box, this white is going to look really, really blue. So go into advanced and click warm, whichever one. I think it was on saturated, and then warm. This gives me the most normal looking colors. Of course, you can just take custom and do whatever you want, but I've got it on warm. Because this, I find it looks normal to me. I don't like any of the others. The natural one looks a bit, this is supposed to be sRGB, sRGB default, and natural is basically like the same thing. But it looks a bit greenish, it looks a bit weird. The colors don't look as nice as when you have it on warm. Saturated, which is too blue, and then warm is when it balances it off. And to me, this looks a lot more normal. Now, when you compare it in this mode to, now as you can see, it is a lot more closer to the AMOLED displays, which in my opinion do have the better color balance and are actually more easier to look at. Now I want to talk about outdoor visibility, because this Nxtpaper display technology makes it easier to see outdoors. And let's compare it to the glossy display over here. Now as you can see, the glossy display is showing some reflections. That's the ceiling, and it is white. Now if you have something like this outdoors, you can see that the the Nxtpaper phone is actually diffusing it, and overall it becomes easier to see because there's no texture or imaging like there is in the Glossy display. So that focuses your eyes on the display, sort of like an out of focus background. Now I've just gone ahead and simulated a sun. I've just pointed my light in directly at the phone. Now I'm going to show you what's going to happen with both of these when you are using these outside. So when you point this at the sun, you can see the sun is there. Now with an OLED display, with a glossy display, sorry, with the sun there, you can still read all of this. That's fine. Now the problem with this phone is when you point at the sun, it all diffuses and it becomes really hard to see. Now when you're reading it like this outdoors, it becomes a lot harder to see compared to the glossy display. So I don't know if they overlooked that or something like that. That is an issue. When you have it where the sun is at a certain angle and you're trying to read, you will not be able to read, or it becomes a lot more harder to read. So when you point it at a certain angle, it will become harder to read, but what you'll notice is that you'll actually be able to focus on the display rather than what's in the reflection. So whereas a glossy display, you'll be looking at the sun or whatever it is in the background, like the ceiling, for example, wherever it is. Right over there, you can see the ceiling, you can see everything is like a window, whereas this focuses you on the display. Now, if you're not pointing it at the sun or anything, if you have it at a different angle like this one or this one, it's very easy to read. The filtering on this, the way that is working, is actually very, very nice, and it becomes so easy to read. Now, I will mention one thing. In my opinion, the white background and the white theme looks a lot better. So what I've done is I've gone with the white theme rather than the dark theme on OLED displays, and I've just turned the brightness a little bit down. Now outdoors, you want to have a maximum. Now as far as being in dim environments, I'll be honest with you, the OLED does do a better job because you can get this very, very dark, and you can also use extra dim option in Android that will make it even dimmer. Now on this phone, that wasn't an option until I found out that there is an option and you can enable it. The problem is it's not in any of the quick settings over here. You can't enable the so-called extra dim option, which you find on some Android phones. Nope, still can't find it. Now this does have an extra dark mode which seems to have disappeared. But it allows you to just get the display just a little bit darker, and that did help, but it wasn't enough. To get to the extra dim option, you can swipe with 2 fingers, and this becomes a lot more easier in nighttime because it gets very, very dark and it's very easy to look at in the middle of the night. The only issue is you have to enable that in the accessibility settings. So if you go all the way down, accessibility, and then you can enable it from here. Extra dim, which I've enabled with the 2 gestures. So yeah, you just need to enable that over here, and then you will be able to use extra dim. And the only thing with this is you will notice the backlight because it will be on. This is a LCD display, so in the middle of the night you will see the backlight with the content on the display, whereas an OLED, it looks very, very dark and it's just better for low-lit environments. That being said, both of these phones can actually get really, really dark and they're easy to see at night time. Now, if you've been watching this video, I'm sure you've noticed some touching and actuations going on when I was swiping around, when I was holding the phone. And that's because I've noticed this one very annoying thing with this phone, and that is that the touch layer on this, or the touch sensitivity, is a bit weird. This display is very sensitive from the edges, and I've accidentally pressed a lot of buttons while I'm just sliding my finger along, and I'm not pressing on the icon. Now I understand that this is actually a button on the side. Hang on. Oops, what the... yeah, it is something, so that is very annoying. I've been very annoyed with this sometimes. It's no big issue, but it is a bit annoying that it does actuate and all that here and there, so it's a bit annoying. Now just some final touches on the display. I just want to mention that because there is an anti-aliasing filter on the display, when you look at pixel art or low resolution images, especially pixel art or retro games and all that, you will see a certain softness to the image. Now I can't show you in this image because this is not a really high resolution image. This image is 512 by 512. But if you upscale the images and you look at if you're going to be pixel perfect, you will see some softness in the image, and it won't be really sharp like it will be on the OLED display. Okay, now I want to talk about the Nxtpaper mode. Now this is just different color modes for this display, and I actually like them, but I've stopped using them because what they do is every time you turn them on and off, they change settings in the phone. So, and it's very annoying. So they've taken the night mode schedule off, which I used to use when it was nighttime, and then it will automatically go to light theme when it was daytime. But when you have these on, it actually takes them off. So I love the color version. So if I go ahead and show you the application drawer, you can see all the different colors there. It looks very vibrant, very colorful. The colors on this display are very nice. I'll go ahead and turn this on, and this is color mode, Nxtpaper color, and you'll notice that it is gone white. Now what I love about this is just how simple and how really nice the design is. Now I would like this theme in the white version, in the default settings, and because it's very easy to read, very easy to see in daytime. Even in bright sunlight, it is very easy to read because of just the white and blackness. The contrast on it is very nice. But you can see the difference in color. It is very muted. This is just to simulate the color e-ink displays. And I have to say, it's actually more colorful than the color e-ink displays, unless you're in direct sunlight, in which case you won't be able to see this. You'll be able to see the color e-ink display. There's that. And the other mode is the Nxtpaper mode, which is just black and white. And what is done is change the icons, is put some outlines around on the text and all that on the, around applications. This mode is just black and white, and there is some warmthness going on, so it makes it look easier to look at and to see, and I do really like it. But there is also just a regular black and white option under normal Android to simulate the monochrome display under the developer settings, and I think that is very similar, but it's actually not the same. So these are the two color modes. They're very nice. I keep them off because I just use it as a normal phone now. Because the reason I keep them off is because it just becomes very annoying when it keeps changing all these other settings that you have. Let's talk about the Android 13. I did get an update on this, and I have updated it, and it has brought some stability and all that, and some performance improvements as well. Now there are slight, they're not major or anything. But it's definitely nice to see an update just recently. As far as the Android user interface goes, they have a very nice interface. I love what TCL has done with this. It's very nice, very beautiful. I actually, I do really like it. One thing I don't like is that when you have an application and you turn it on and you turn it off, the animation has been disabled. And if you go into ID64, go into system, give you a few hours because it's a really slow phone. If you go all the way down, you'll notice a disable app open animation, enable Nxtpaper animation, and disable app close animation. So they've actually turned them off from the software launcher, which is just annoying. But that's the only bad thing. The rest is actually pretty featureful. It's full Android 13. It's got all the features. You got picture by picture mode and all that. Everything on here is working. It's actually very cool. Now by default, the developer options were enabled, and as I mentioned, you don't really need the 8 GB of virtual memory. They've got it in there. If you do need it, you can have it. It's in there. It's very nice. And if you go down, the animations, I have changed the duration to 0.05 because by default these animations were very slow, or they took a very long time in my opinion. So that's just my opinion. Let's talk about the cameras. And the cameras on this phone surprisingly are actually very usable. It's very nice to use. I was expecting them to be really bad and much worse, but they're actually pretty usable. Now you do have some options like night mode, and this is what makes this phone just so much better, and the cameras from this phone are just so much more better and usable because of this night mode. You got some panorama, and you got and I might make a separate video going into other details, but you do have a high res mode, which is 50 megapixels on the rear camera. The detail from the 50 megapixel camera is very nice when the light is good. So I'm just going to show you the images I've taken with this phone. So this is the 50 megapixel mode. As you can see, that's what it looks like. This is the 12 megapixel mode, and in my opinion, while it looks more noisier, it does look a lot more natural, and I think it looks better in my opinion in terms of detail. It just looks, if you use the night mode, this is what it does. Now there is one problem I have with the night mode, and that is that it does sharpen up images aggressively, and it sharpens up quite a bit too much in my opinion. So this here is shot with the normal 12 megapixel mode, and the image is actually very nice. It's, well, more than usable for images that you would take on a phone, and you can see that the detail level is like this. If you just look at it on the video, there's no point me putting them on in the video in the video editor, because you can see them on here. And I go ahead and turn on the night mode, and you can see all the noise is gone, and you can see the detail, but as you can see, it does look a little over sharpened, especially down here. You can see the halos on around the glass. And if you use the 50 megapixel mode, now you can see the colors are a bit different because the sensor is different. I mean, the way it captures the image is different, but if you zoom in, you can see it looks a lot more natural. It looks a lot more, there's fine grain there. It looks more nicer. You can see while there is less detail there, this does look a lot more natural, and it overall looks like a more natural image. Now this is a 50 megapixel shot when I was walking out and about, and you can see the detail that captures in outdoor conditions is actually pretty nice. It captures nice detail. You can see that the camera is definitely more than usable. Now the portrait mode doesn't seem to do that all that well. What it just does is adds a softness filter on it. It doesn't blur the background. But the cameras, I was actually expecting to be disappointed, but these are definitely usable cameras. Now if you're into photography, you might want to know that this does not have any RAW support, so you won't be able to shoot RAW images with this. Now let's talk about the speakers. This has 2 speakers and they are stereo. If you go into the settings and if you go into the sound settings, you have this option called 3D boom sound. Now from my experience, the only thing that is done is amplified the sound that comes out of the speaker. Nothing more than that. And I'm sure there's something going on, but what all it's really done is made it more louder. And I've just left it on because it keeps coming back on automatically. It keeps turning itself on, so I've just left it like that. So that's one thing I don't like. It might be something to do with the Nxtpaper mode, but it keeps turning back on, so I've just left it on. I do prefer a much quieter sound because don't know. But the sound from the speakers is actually pretty respectable. Just like the cameras, they may not be the best, they may not be mind-blowing, but they're actually definitely respectable, and the speakers on this are actually pretty nice. Let's talk about the battery life. You can get 1.5 days out of this. So the battery life, the 5010 milliamp hour battery inside this is actually pretty nice. You easily get through 1 day. Now this does have 30 watt fast charging. I don't know if it is. It comes with some blow up, doesn't it? When it's charging up, it does get a bit warm. And what I found is that it just throttles down the charging to about 12 watts, which is just like a normal 5 volts 2 amp charger. So it slows down to 12 watts. I've only noticed that on like a couple of occasions, so it's not really an issue, but I just wanted to point that out. I can get this charged up within an hour, so it's very, very cool. And the battery life is about 1.5 days, so you can easily get through a day on just 80% charged, and you'll have about 35% left over on the next day. So you can definitely get through a day, and the battery life from this is actually very impressive. Now I want to touch on gaming. This is not a gaming phone. The performance of the CPU and the GPU is actually mediocre, and I was actually expecting a bit more than what I got. It will play some light games like Mario Run or Goblins and Gold, but it's not gonna and it'll actually play quite a lot of games, but the graphics will be lowered. And if you're gonna play Fortnite or something like that, then it will be stuttering sometimes, and the graphics quality is just not up there. And if you go into some games that are not well optimized, it's just not going to run as well. I have noticed some stuttering and all that in the user interface, some lagging and everything. So the user interface and just browsing through the menus, different applications and all that, especially this blur effect and whatever they've got going on, it just tanks it a bit. So there is quite a lot of hiccups. So I'm not going to recommend this as a gaming phone, but that's really up to you if you want to buy this. I don't think anybody's going to buy it for gaming. I want to mention the other thing. Even in the up drawer, this is not 90 Hertz. At least it's not running at 90 FPS. The GPU seems to be struggling here. But if I go into something like this, you can see this is a lot more smoother. And the GPU is definitely able to render 90 Hertz or 90 FPS on here. So the GPU itself is pretty weak. It's 5 years old, and so don't expect much for gaming wise. Let's talk about what I like about this. I like the cameras. I like the speakers on this phone. I love the display. This is very nice. I love the battery life on this phone. And I also love the Android flavor that they've got going on. This is just a very nice looking user interface. I do like it. It's very nice. And it does have quite a lot of features. So if you go ahead and hold down, you can go into Home Editor. And from here, you can select multiple applications. So it's got different options that you would find on Samsung phones that even the Google Pixels don't have. So they have got some stuff in there that's very nice. Now let's talk about what I dislike about this. And that is the performance. I wasn't expecting it to be groundbreaking or anything, but it does have hiccups throughout the user interface. I mean, it's not showing up any right now, but it's slow sometimes, doing things, loading up. If I go into Reddit, it's just totally not the fastest phone. It's mediocre. I mean, it's fine. Okay, it's time to conclude. What I will say is that personally, I don't recommend this, even for people who are into reading. Although display is easy to read and easy to use compared to other LCD displays, I found the OLED displays are actually even easier to use. And there's actually a little trick into getting them to be more easier, because this has a light panel directly behind it shining into your face. So this is going to glare into your eyes. Now we'll give you some tips. Even this display, I had to do some adjustments to get it to look easy to read, and that is changing the color temperature and everything. And on this phone, I had that on. I had the comfort shield on, and that just makes it a lot more easier to look at. And I've actually been using this OLED display like that, so to me it's easy enough to read. And as far as the viewing angles and the way the display looks, to be honest with you, the OLED displays are easier to look at than this one. And I think it has something to do with the LCD panel at the back, because I know the filtering does help quite a bit. And if you have this on a table, or if you look at it, it is very nice. It looks better than the OLED display. But the LCD module, the LCD IPS display on the back, it just gets in the way. I think what they really need to do is put an OLED panel on there, and then put this filtering and all that on front of it. And I think that would be the eye candy that we're looking for. Also, this phone, in my opinion, is not worth £190. In my opinion, this is worth £150, somewhere around there. So I won't recommend it for £190. I will have more videos coming about this, and I'm going to compare it to the OLED display, and I'm also going to compare it to the color e-ink display. But at this point, you probably figured out that there isn't really a point, because this is an LCD display. Outdoors, the e-ink displays are actually much better. They just work a lot better. They're designed to work a lot better under those situations. So I'll end the video here. If you guys have any questions, ask me in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in another video.